Hi guys, and welcome back to the vlog. I announced a long time ago that I was going to do an Ask Me Anything. I even told you guys send your questions or put your questions in the comments. That was weeks ago, and now is when I'm finally getting around to, first of all, looking up the questions and then answering them. So yeah, this vlog is going to be an Ask Me Anything. Like I had told you guys when I put the call out for questions, I was going to try and just answer the ones that most people liked or most people wanted to know. As long as they weren't too intrusive, I would answer them. And by too intrusive, if it's like an Ask Me Anything but it's about someone else, then that's you. Let them do an Ask Me Anything and then they can answer. Let's do womanhood and beauty. So let's start with the hair going down. So sister locks, I've had these for 5 years. I go and see Jackie. Jackie has been doing my sister locks forever. I've tagged her in a lot of videos, but it's sister locks 254 on Instagram, or 254 sister locks on Instagram. And she's the one who installed my locks. She's the one who 5 years ago, she's the one who installed my locks, and she's the one who retightens them every 8 weeks. I don't use any products except rose water and a little oil if my scalp, like scalp oil, if my scalp is feeling dry, that's it. So besides going for a retightening every 8 weeks and spraying rose water and scalp oil, I don't do anything else with my locks. Ella has had her locks for 6 years, I believe. No, actually 6 years. 4 years. No, yeah, 4 years. She was a year behind me, so 4 years. Okay, beauty products. I am very, like on my skin, I don't use a lot of beauty products, to be honest. The only thing I use besides sunscreen and just your basic moisturizer is vitamin C serum. And right now I'm using the Garnier one. Balancing roles as a woman. Like someone was like, you do content creation, you do writing, you have a 9 to 5, you have 3 kids, a husband, your wife, like friendships. How do you balance everything? First of all, like, it's a struggle. Let me not lie. Let no one lie. It is a huge struggle to balance everything. Sometimes I complain to Mike, my husband, I complain to Ella, like, I'm so tired. Like my Saturdays, for example, I work 9 to 5 and then 5 to 9 I'm on motherhood mode, and then in between there I still do content creation. Saturdays are my writing days, and we were doing Doa classes. Those are the marriage classes for 10 weeks on Saturdays, so it would be Doa and then writing and then having a date with Mike. Then Sunday, there's no nanny, so church, then coming home, taking care of the kids, sometimes squeezing in content. It is a struggle, and I think most women are struggling, even if they're doing, not the exact things that I do. It's a struggle. I try and take time for myself. I lean heavily on my bestie. I've mentioned her here before, and on Mike, my husband, on my nanny. That's like my secondary caregiver besides, Mike and I. So yeah, basically leaning on God, leaning on, a friend who I can tell all my crap to, leaning on my husband. That's how and being kind to myself, which I'm not. I fail at that sometimes, but being kind to myself also really helps. Like sometimes I can't do everything. Sometimes my battery is done. There's a lot of times I miss brand gigs, brand engagements, brand events. Like a brand calls me and says, oh, come here. And I'm like, I'm not a full-time content creator. I have a 9 to 5. I can't. Or come do this on a Sunday. I don't have a nanny on a Sunday. I can't. Or come do this in the evening. I'm so tired from my 9 to 5. I just can't. So I do miss out on a lot of things. I think there's someone famous, I forget who said the myth that women can do everything. It's just that it's a myth. We can't do everything. There's give and take, and it's a struggle to balance. Okay, then a lot of questions around career. So one of them was the path to becoming a published author. So my path looks different, I think, from most authors. For one, I did not study writing in school. I'm not an English major. My undergraduate was in political science. I have a bachelor's degree in political science and then an MBA with a concentration in marketing. So no writing in there. But while I was homeschooling the kids, I realized there was a gap in books about our culture or based around our culture, fictional books for children. Now, that being said, I have always liked writing, I have always liked reading, and so it was easy for me, not easy, poof, I take that back. It was not the most crazy thing in the world for me to think, let me do this, let me write a book. And at first it was just going to be a book for Ella, pretty much, to help her understand Kenyan cultural heroes in a way that was exciting. Syokimau, Luanda Magere, Gasara Win, all of these heroes that we grew up hearing about, but presenting it in a way that was interesting and fun and fictional. And I always use the example of like Ella knew more about Zeus because of all the fictional characters and books that have been and movies that have been made than she knew about Kenyan heroes. So that was my goal. So when I decided to write, actually, I decided to write a short story. I wrote that short story and I was like, this is not bad. It was only, I think, I don't know, I want to say 8,000 words. It was not a full book, it was 8,000 words, I think, maximum. And I went on this website, and everyone who asks me, how did you end up finding an agent? I tell them the same thing. I went to this website where you can find freelance editors for your writing and freelance people who can market your books. It's called Reedsy, 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 Reedsy.com. So I put my short story there. I found someone to edit it. She ended up marketing that short story to a publisher who then asked me if I could write a series of books based on that short story that I wrote. That was my path. It is non-traditional because I didn't study writing. I'm not part of any of the writing communities in Kenya. I didn't publish with a local publisher. It was just it was a miracle, a blessing, everything you want to say wrapped into one, that I found this agent who loved my work, who is also an editor and who got me connected with a publisher who was looking for this exact story. So that's my path, but it can look very different, obviously, depending on what you're writing. And the advice I give most people who say, how do I get a book published? Just first of all, write, because finishing the book is the hardest thing. Right now, I'm writing my 6th book. It's the 4th book in my series, Intasimi Warrior series, and finishing the book, actually writing books and finishing them, seeing it through to the end, the hardest thing. So first do that. First have a finished manuscript that you can then get edited. You can find an agent. That agent can market the work, and then you move forward. But first, just finish the book, which is advice for myself, because let me tell you, I am struggling to write this book, but God is there. God is in control. And then transitioning from full-time content creation back to employment. So from 2017, Lam was born in 2016. Yeah. From 2017 until 2021, I was a full-time freelancer. I was writing books. I was doing content creation. I was also at some point towards the end of that advising small startups, but not formal or full-time employment. How was that? It was, to be honest, and the follow-up question is, would you ever go back to full-time content creation? No, I would never go back to full-time content creation. What I realized during my time when I was a freelance creative, let's call it that, is that I love the stability of formal employment. There are things about formal employment I don't like, obviously, having to be in an office 9 to 5, having to deal with crazy bosses, having my time dictated, not being able to be as home as much as I want with the kids. However, I find that even my creative juices are more free flowing when I have the assurance of a check at the end of the month from employment. So I think I am the kind of creative that doesn't want to feel like I'm dependent on my art, because then I don't find myself being creative. So to answer the question, the transition back to formal employment came almost as a relief to me, because now I didn't have that pressure of, oh my gosh, every month where's the money coming from? Like where am I gonna get this month's money for the next month? So it was a relief. Was it easy in terms of finding a job? No, it's not easy. Anyone who has been job hunting will tell you it's not easy. I reached out to my networks. I did the most to get the first job after now in 2022, beginning of 2022. It was difficult, but to get the job. But once I had the job, I am a corporate girly. I feel like at heart I'm a corporate girly. Like freelancing felt a little bit too vulnerable to me, like too, I don't know, it was a lot for my personality type. So going back to the workforce, the routine of it, I love routine. So the routine of it was welcome. The stability was welcome. But I did, struggle, first of all, to get the job, even though I was, doing everything I could, networking, etc. And I had the papers. I had my 2 degrees. I had my experience from before, because I worked before that, before I stopped formal employment. I did work. So I had all that, but it was still hard to get a job. And then, of course, it was hard once I got the job. Even if I was enjoying all of the stability, it was hard feeling guilty about missing things with the kids, I will never forget, I missed a Mother's Day event for Lamu at the school he was in at the time, and he has never forgotten to this day. I think he must have been like 5. This boy is 8. He has never forgotten that I missed a Mother's Day tea at his kindergarten. Anyway, so those are the kind of trade-offs. But to answer the question, I would not go back to full-time content creation. And writing books, someone asked, what are the profit margins? Please, you will not get rich from writing books. The percentage of writers who make back or enough to live solely off of writing books, even when you're internationally published like me, it's a very small percentage. It is not enough to survive on. The checks are not frequent enough to survive on. So yeah, even though I would love to write all the time and make all this money, maybe if Netflix picks up one of my books, by the way, Netflix, Showmax, maybe then. But the average writer has to do other stuff outside of writing in order to survive. But no, I would not go back to doing that full time, because I love the stability and assurance. And I love the corporate world. Imagine, I like my heels, I like my skirts, I like marketing, which is what I do. I like corporate communications, I like brand building. I actually love what I do. So I would not go back. But I also love the creative side of me. So I need both in my life. I could not do corporate world only, and I could not do creative only. I need both. Someone told me it's because I'm a Gemini. I don't know about all that, but I do know I'm happier when I have both. Moving back to Kenya. So I was in the US from 2002 to 2012. So a full 10 years. I was there for my undergraduate degree and my MBA, and I worked in between. So the question is, what's the process moving back? It's different for everyone. I was one of those people who always said, when I was leaving, I remember telling my dad when I was leaving for my undergraduate degree, I'm coming back. And of course he was like, I mean, I mean, he would definitely thought I would be homesick, but he thought I would like now stay that side. But I have always known, I always knew I wanted to move back home. I always say, like, out there they make you feel like you're an other, like you are a foreigner, and I love the feeling of being in my own country, in my own land. So for me, it was never a question of whether I would stay out there. Even when I got married out there, I told my husband at the time, my ex-husband, that, I'm going to move back to Africa. Like, that is, I never want to settle in the US. But moving back itself, I think because the question was like advice. I was very happy to come back home. I came back home, like I said, in 2012 at a time when I was so homesick. I had been homesick for probably the last 6 years I was in the US, or the last 5 years, like half the time I was there, because I was there 10 years. The last 5, I think I was homesick, especially when I had Ella. So I had Ella in 2010, and I think being there with a baby, even if I had a husband, I just felt so alone. I just felt like I needed to be around my people. And so by the time I moved back, or Ella and I moved back in 2012, it was like, I'm home. But obviously that experience is very different for people. I moved back into my sister's house. And so I had a soft landing. I didn't have a job, but I had a place to stay. And then eventually, like, I found a job, I think 4 or 5 months after moving back. Then I was able to move out with Ella, and then we could, set up our lives. But I think what made it somewhat easier for me, what made the transition easier for me was, one, the soft landing, having family who were there for me when I moved back. And 2, I just never felt it was an option to stay out there. So even when I came back, I was not one of those people who moves back, but your one foot is here, one foot is there. It's like, I'm here to see if it works, and if it doesn't work, I'll go back. No, me, I moved those odds of goodbye. I've not even been to the US since I moved back. I think the next time I'll go back is when I'm taking Ella for uni, which brings me to another question, kind of related, is, would I ever let my kids move away for university? Absolutely. I've told Ella's dad and I met at our uni in the US, and we have told her that's where she's going. We're not even really giving her an option. Like, I think you learn so much from being in another country at whatever age, but I think it's so good for emotional and mental development to live outside of your country, outside of your comfort zone, even for a short while. So absolutely, I would let my kids go abroad. In fact, I would encourage my kids to go abroad for uni. I would never move outside of Kenya, as if I can help it. Like, if I have to, if it's the only thing that makes financial sense for my husband and I or our family, then fine, I would go. But I would really love to now just stay in Kenya for the rest of our lives. I have no desire, let me put it that way. I have no desire to ever leave Kenya again, permanently. I'll go for holidays, shoot, I'll go for a vacation, but actually to go for like a job, for like move away, y'all, I was away for 10 years and I wanted to come back for a lot of that time. So now that I'm back, I mean, I've been back for a while, but I am very happy to continue living here for the rest of my days. Love, how did Mike and I meet? So we've told this story on our podcast, which was also a question. The podcast is coming back. Guys, we just need to get our lives together. So much is happening in our lives, careers. The podcast kind of had to take a back seat, but I promise it'll come back. It will come back. I just don't know when. But we have said this on the podcast. We met at work. I was working. I'm in marketing. I had an event. He works for a media company. The media company sent him to work the event. That's how we met. How did you have the confidence to trust in love and start dating again? So my last long-term relationship ended at the end of 2021. So 2022 moved back to Nairobi with the kids. And from 2022 until when I met Mike in 2023, I mean, I was in the streets, but I never had like any serious. I think the kind of people I was talking to were very representative of where even I was at emotionally, which is just not ready to commit, not really meeting anybody who was inspiring commitment. Like they were a reflection of where I was at. But in 2023, around, I don't know, like Feb, March, April, I felt like there was like a change, and I really made God a main part of my who the next person I'm going to meet. And I said this on the podcast, but I came up with a list and I called it the burning bush list. Burning bush because Moses needed a big sign to know that it was God. So I told God, please don't bring any other nonsense characters in my life. And the way I'll know that this is the person you want me to date is it'll be like a burning bush sign. So I created a list and he'll have all these things and yada, yada, yada. Long story short, all that to say, by the time I was meeting Mike in June of 2023, I think I had just prayed that prayer so much that it had become like, no, the next person I date has to be the person. Otherwise, I won't bother. The people I was talking to, I mean, if you're in the streets, you know. If you know, you know. Like, they're, mature in age, but not emotionally mature. And so I kind of set, that season aside in 2023. And I was like, no, now I need to just focus on the next person has to be a serious person. And I always knew. I think I love love. I've made no secret of that. I've always loved love. I always knew I was not going to be single for the rest of my life. I knew. And some people are like, what? Even though you had 3 kids? Yeah. Even if I had 10 kids, I just know God intended for me to raise my children in a 2-parent household. But I just didn't know how he would work that out for me. And in 2023, I made the decision to let God work that out for me instead of me trying to do it for myself, which is what I had been doing my whole life. I think it's the first time I prayed that prayer over and over again, the one for God, if this is not the man for me, make him act a fool. Make him do something stupid. Make him leave me alone. Make me leave him alone. Like, just make something happen. And if there's a prayer that God answers quick, fast, it's that one. God will make a man go mad when you pray that prayer, and immediately you lose interest. You'll be like, hey, goodbye. I mean, disgust. You will get the ick. You pray that prayer, but pray it when you're willing to listen to whatever God says. Anyway, so that year I was really praying that prayer, and then I met Mike at a work event, and within the first day of talking, because we spent the whole day together because he was there, I could tell. I could just tell there was something there. And he was also at a point where he had, been through a lot of relationships. He had been through a lot of heartache, and he was also looking for peace and stability and deep love and connection. And that's how we started dating. And to answer another question, we dated for a year before we got married. Is it a year? Yeah. Yes, we dated for a year before we got married. And someone raised this, which is, you said you never wanted to get married. True, which is actually one of the reasons my parents asked to meet me aside and were like, what is going on? Have you been wrong? What? Because you have always said you don't want to get married. And the only thing I could tell them is, yeah, I know, which is why I know this is from God, because I have never felt someone spark that desire in me to get married. You must understand, the first time I got married, I was 22. I was a baby. I did not know what I didn't know, and I did not know what I knew. So this was the first time they had seen me actually desire to get married and then get, engaged and everything. So what changed, I think, is first of all knowing what I needed, and making the decision that God would be an integral part of my decision in who I was going to date and be with. But yeah, that's how I knew Mike was the one for me, because I had never wanted to get married to someone. Can you imagine? That was the first time that I was like, hiya, I want to be this man's wife. Like, straight up, this man, this one, I want to be Mrs. Mondo. Like, I can see, I want him to be my husband. I want to call him a husband. I want him to call me his wife. So I didn't introduce Mike to the kids immediately. I, first of all, had to pray my prayers for, if this man is not the man, take him away. I had to see if he met my burning bush qualifications. I had to see if, it was for real, for real. So when I finally did, they met him. The kids met him at the same time my sisters did, because it was like a family thing. And it was, the boys are just loving their boys, their kids. They were happy to have someone take them to get haircuts. Let's just start there. I was happy to have someone to do, boy things with them. With Ella is very much like me, in the sense that, she'll be kind, she will be cordial, but and she's very good at communicating how she's feeling with me. And if you treat her with respect, she will reciprocate that respect. So right now, we're talking about the introduction. So that day it was just like, hey everyone, this is the man that I'm dating. And of course, Ella being a teenager and my nephews were there, they were like, ooh. So they made a big deal about it. But once that quietened down, like in subsequent days, it was just like, mom, so this is the person you're dating? I'm like, yeah, and it's serious. So she knew right from the beginning. She knew that if I am bringing this man here, it is serious. So she was excited when we got engaged. She was even the one telling him, like, dude, are you gonna pop the question? Like, what are you gonna do? So she knew it was coming. So when it finally came, when he proposed, she was not surprised. The boys were so excited too, and so that was nice. It was, and I thank God for that. I thank God for that, because for Mike and I, that was a huge thing. For me, obviously as a mom, it was a huge thing, because if he did not get along with the kids, it would have been raps. That the relationship would have gone nowhere. I would have taken that as a sign from God saying, he's not the one for you. So, I thank God that it was the kids and him liked each other. So that's how that happened. Yeah. And then wedding process. I knew one of the things that used to discourage me about marriage was thinking of the whole wedding thing. Like, it just seemed like a headache. So whenever, even before I met Mike, I used to say, yuck, like that. Sorry to everyone who, this is just me. For me, the whole wedding process just seemed like it discouraged me from the institution of marriage. I would think towards like, I would love to, have a life with someone, but that hurdle, which I used to think of it as a hurdle of the wedding process, like having a big wedding and looking for a dress and inviting hundreds of people. Luckily, Mike and I were aligned. Well, he was open to having a wedding, but I was very sure that I wanted something very simple. So we did a civil wedding. We went to the AG's office. That process it took about 2 months from start to finish. I think it was 2 months, less than 3 months for sure. But so you do some stuff online, you go for an interview, there's a notice period of 21 days where they put it in a bulletin. Is it a bulletin? Is that what it's called? Anyway, and then now you go for your wedding. And I loved it. I actually really loved the ceremony. The AG's office is so beautiful. Some people saw photos, which are on my Instagram, of the AG's office, and they couldn't believe that's what it looks like people who had been there before. So I guess it didn't look like that kitambo. Now it looks beautiful. That day it was so easy. We just went. We were there for less than an hour and a half. I went with my best friend. He came with his brother, and it was just beautiful. After that, we had a beautiful lunch, the most delicious lunch ever at Sankara. Then we picked the kids up from school. It was a weekday, and then we had a nice family lunch, family dinner, and they've never forgotten it to this day because they know that's the day we got married, and we went to a restaurant which has now become their favorite. So that was our wedding. I did not want the big ceremony. I did not want the big traditions either. That one Mike was aligned with. He didn't want the big traditional thing. I didn't want the big formal, lots of guest things. So we did it the way we wanted to do it, and I'm so grateful for that because yeah, just was really magical for us. Are we planning to have kids? No. We are not, and we are using every bit of science to make sure that does not happen. He has 2 children. I have 3 children. Guys, that's enough. We have been fruitful. We have multiplied. I think we are okay. That was one of the first things on my list, the burning bush list. One of the items was meet a man who does not need me to have his babies. Meaning I have my babies, he can have his babies, but he doesn't need me to have his babies. So we are aligned on that. I've always wanted 3 children. I have 3 children. He's happy to have his 2 plus 3. I'm happy to have my 3 plus his 2. We are good now. We're okay. We're not planning to have any more children. Things I'm doing differently in this marriage. I mean, I think someone has commented this quite a few times. People have commented this quite a few times. I mean, that I've put God at the center of this marriage, and that is true. That's one of the things I've said it before, even when I decided to get serious about dating, that I made a very conscious decision that God would be at the center of this marriage, and I wanted a godly man. That was also on my list, of my burning bush list. When I met Mike, he was a Christian, but not a church-going Christian. He quickly saw that meant a lot to me, and so he started coming to church with the kids and I, even when we were still dating, before we got married. So having God at the center of my marriage and my family is a very conscious decision that I made in this new season of life, and it's one of the major things I'm doing differently. And that has led to other things like going for marriage classes, the Ndoa classes that I mention a lot, making friends with other Christian couples, having devotions as a family every night, having devotions as a couple every night, reading the Bible every day, even for me, just as a woman, to be a praying woman, to be a praying wife. All of those are things that I'm doing differently, and I'm so grateful for that because I can see, if I could go back to tell younger me, like, I've always been a Christian, but I think this is the first time I've put God in such a central place in this area of my life, and the difference is clear. Well, we're on the kids, kind of. The kids have always been raised Christian. Someone asked about that. Even when I was in my other relationship, we would go to church. There's a time we weren't going to church because the babies, Tawi especially, would not sit still. But I have always raised my kids to be Christians, basically. And homeschooling, even homeschooling, if you remember, if you're an OG and you remember, we used to use a lot of Christian curriculums and stuff. And on the question of homeschooling, which is where I was going, homeschooling we did for a while. OGs know this. We actually stopped homeschooling while we were still living in Malindi. And the reason for that is that season it just felt like that season needed to come to an end. I felt like I needed to work, even though I was out there. I felt like I needed to focus more on freelance working because the math was not mathing. The household was not surviving and needed more income. I had always been doing all that other stuff, content creation, freelancing, or writing and getting money from that, but more money was needed. And so I needed to put more focus in that. So the kids actually started traditional schooling, or they transitioned out of homeschool when we're still in Malindi. So that's in 2021. So by the time we moved back to Nairobi in 2022, they were just now joining a different school here. It's not that they were now transitioning out of homeschooling. They had already done that. And by the kids, it was just Ella and Lamu. Tawi was not school going age. So Ella and Lamu started going to a formal school in Malindi and then transferred to another school in Nairobi. And it was such a smooth transition. They are both very social kids. And I mean, not to toot my own horn, but academically, they were even ahead when they when they moved back to formal schooling. So that transition was fine. They loved being in school. Every once in a while, they would say, "Oh, remember when we did this in homeschool, or how fun this was." So I think we will always look back, the three of us, Ella, Lamu, and I, will always look back on that time together as a homeschool with such fondness. But they're also very happy in regular school. So I don't know, life is about seasons, and that season was beautiful, but this season is beautiful in its own way too. And I'm quite happy that they're doing so well in school. If you hear them in the background, that's because they're in their rooms playing at the moment. The boys are. Ella is in her room being a teenager. Okay. So still on the kids, let me just try and answer this in the most civil and non-messy way possible, which, if you know me and you know everything that's been happening with this whole thing, you know that that's been what I've been trying to do, to keep it as civil and non-messy as possible. But I understand the curiosity, and I understand there's a lot of questions because you saw my life in that season, and so you have questions lingering from that season to this one. So let me try and answer. Co-parenting is a mixed bag right now. I have one co-parenting relationship where we share financial responsibilities, we share physical custody as much as we can. He lives abroad, and it's very smooth, and we are even friends. I have another co-parenting relationship where at this point 100% of financial responsibility and 100% of custody is with me. I think I was very spoiled by my first co-parenting relationship, because I remember even on the vlog when people would ask about co-parenting, I was like, co-parenting can be so smooth, and it's just about putting the kids' interests first, and when you're both mature, co-parenting can be problem-free, which I guess is still true in many ways. I just had never experienced the dark side of co-parenting, which can be extremely contentious and unsettling and disheartening and discouraging and financially exhausting, emotionally exhausting. I had never experienced that. So I was speaking from very much a place of privilege. Now that I've experienced the other side of co-parenting, I will say that it has its really, really dark moments. But at this moment, I can say that's what's happening. Those are the facts. In one co-parenting relationship, there's shared financial responsibility, very free-flowing, open, almost like not weekly, but certainly multiple times a month communication, physical custody whenever he's able to or wants to or is around, or she flies out for every school holiday. It's going really well. I have another co-parenting relationship where that's not the case, and at this point it is 100% everything on me. On me, I should say on us, on my husband and I. It's on us. It's on this side, let's say. Everything is on this side at the moment. And that's all I'll say about that, because like I said, I don't want to be messy. I don't want to put other people's business out there. So that's just where I'm going to leave it. And I think that is all the questions. I'm so sorry if I did not answer, yours, but I feel like this video is already so long. So I'm going to end it here. Thank you so much for making it this far and for sticking with me and with us. If you're an OG, I love you guys. If you're a new subscriber, welcome to the family. We keep it real over here. So, but we're nice. It's a warm community, and I love that for us. If you are watching and you've not subscribed, please do, because it would be a huge encouragement for me and it would make me happy. So thank you for doing that. You could just pause and hit subscribe. So yeah, that's it for me. I feel like I've talked too much, I've smiled too much, and it's about time I ended this video. Love you guys.